Welcome to Groups This Week. As a church, we exist to help all people become fully devoted followers of Jesus. We believe doing life together is a crucial part of that journey. During this time, we're going to unpack and dig deeper into the sermon we heard this past week. Let's dive in as we continue to grow in our faith, knowledge, and love of Jesus together. Well, hello and welcome, community groups.
Hey guys.
Welcome back, Sam, from vacation.
Yeah.
Glad to have you back.
So good to be back.
Just wanted to give a quick shout out actually before we dive into the conversation today to Ron and Elaine's community group cohort.
Let's go.
Last night, it was so wonderful. They planned a gathering for all of the community groups that are represented within their cohort. We've got cohorts of community group leaders that meet every so often, and they planned with 4 of their community groups to meet at Lafarge Lake. And we just had a great time of fellowship and eating ice cream, lawn games. So yeah, just want to give a shout out to Ron and Elaine for helping organize that, and for all the groups that attended that. We've also got another one coming up with Chris Wong
awesome.
on this coming Saturday. So this is something that groups are doing. If your group isn't part of a cohort, hey, we'd love to see if we can work you into one if the leader's able to. So, but yeah, we just want to celebrate that.
So cool.
But now transitioning into our Psalms of Ascent.
Yes.
Sam, we were looking at Psalm 130 this past Sunday.
Yeah. Awesome psalm.
Yeah. And I think what we see in Psalm 130 is a lot on like waiting on the Lord. So maybe what I'll do is I'll actually read verses 5 to 6 that speak to this idea. First, it says, I wait for the Lord, my soul waits, and in his word I hope. My soul waits for the Lord more than watchmen for the morning, more than watchmen for the morning. And so maybe my first question, Sam, is like, what is waiting on the Lord?
Yeah, great question. Well, I love the illustration that the psalmist uses here of the watchman. Watchman, if you don't know, is someone who does the night shift, and they're watching out for danger. And that can take on various forms. When I was in high school, so back in my town, a little town called Goderich in Ontario, growing up, every summer there'd be this huge Celtic music festival in Goderich. And so they would hire high school students to do the night shift, to watch, to make sure none of the instruments got stolen or those sorts of things. And so one year I did that. I got paid to be a watchman, to watch over this kind of music festival. And so the watchman's job is fairly simple. You're watching out for danger. You're watching out for thieves. And you're waiting expectantly for the morning to come. Now, if you know me, you know that nights is not my prime. Like I peak kind of midday, and by 9 p.m. I'm exhausted. And so staying up, I was waiting for morning. I'm like watching and waiting and walking around, but so tired, just believing that in a few hours, the dawn is coming and the day will come and I can finally go to sleep. And so the watchman's job is important, but he doesn't make the sun come up. He's expectant that the sun is going to rise, and he's doing his job, his duties with that expectancy that the night will come to an end and the morning will come. And so I love that analogy of what it means to wait on the Lord is what waiting, because waiting kind of sounds passive sometimes.
Totally.
Right? It's like, well, I'm just going to sit here and twiddle my thumbs and wait for the Lord. But that's not what the psalmist is talking about here. It's this waiting with expectancy. And I love this book, A Long Obedience in the Same Direction by Eugene Peterson. We've talked about it a few times, and it's been really helpful in the framing of this series. But I love what Eugene Peterson says about this idea of waiting or hoping in the Lord. He says, hoping is not about doing nothing. It's not fatalistic resignation. It means going about our assigned task confident that God will provide the meaning and the conclusions. It's not compelled to do work away and keeping up appearances with the bogus spirituality. It is the opposite of desperate and panicky manipulation, of scurrying and worrying. And hoping is not just dreaming. It's not spinning an illusion or fantasy to protect us from our boredom or our pain. It means confident, alert expectancy that God will do what he said he'll do. It's an imagination put in the harness of faith. It is a willingness to let God do it his way and in his time. And I thought this was so interesting. It's the opposite of making plans and then demanding God make them effective, telling him both how and what to do. This is not hoping in God. That's bullying God. And And then he quotes that same verse, but in the Message translation, I pray to God, my life is a prayer, waiting for what he'll say and do. My life is on the line before God, my Lord, waiting and watching till morning. Waiting and watching till morning. And so I think it's this expectancy, this faith that God's going to move. And as Eugene Peterson said, it's continuing to do what's in front of you and the tasks, but believing that he is going to lead and guide your steps. And I think this idea of waiting can be so difficult in our culture.
Yeah. Culture of like instant gratification. Totally. We're not patient people when we live in kind of this immediacy.
We're used to things, getting things fast, right? Absolutely. And so even the thought of waiting on the Lord, sometimes I remember earlier on in my Christian journey, wanting to experience God in his presence and spending a few weeks kind of praying and expecting kind of like just this deep intimacy because I had spent 2 or 3 weeks waiting. It's like, well, I've been waiting on you for 2 or 3 weeks. I should be kind of hearing your voice so loudly already, because that seemed like so long. I'm so used to like a smartphone and all these things. But what we learn all throughout the Psalms of Ascent is this long obedience in the same direction, that it's this persistency after God. Yeah. And sometimes hearing his voice takes removing of the clutter. So for me, I've been trying to cultivate this practice of listening to God, and we did a series on this back in January. But life as a pastor gets so busy with running a large multi-campus church and leading staff and meeting with people and pastoring people and preparing sermons and all the rest of it. And so it's so easy to go about a day without ever stopping and waiting on the Lord. I found, because he just said I went away on vacation for a little while, and having a few weeks of just quiet. Well, it wasn't terribly quiet because we had our kids with us, but
as quiet as you can.
But not work anyways. I just felt it was such a beautiful time of just like being attuned to God's voice. And I tried to start these days as we were away. We were out of town in a different place. Just saying like, God, if there's anyone on my path today in the grocery store, at the beach, wherever we're going, that you want to give a specific word to.
So cool.
I'm just available. I'm waiting on you. And I found myself sitting and looking and pondering and just saying like, God, is there anyone here that you want to say something to and you want to use me as a conduit for that? And there was a few moments where it was really beautiful. Wow. We're actually at a church service on a beach, like a beach church service, which is so cool on an island. And there was a guy sitting beside me. We didn't chat at all. But in worship, I just felt really strongly, and I don't often have this, but just really strongly that God, something very specific for this guy. And so after the service, I all the way through, I was reluctant, like, is it really you, God? If it is, keep this passion burning in me to share it, and if not, just let it fade away. And by the end of the service, I still couldn't shake it, and so I shared it with him, and it was this very profound moment, and got to pray over him and see God move through that moment, just being available, just waiting on him. I'm still going to go about my duties. I'm still going to take care of my kids and do all the things that I'm doing. But I'm also going to wait expectantly that you're going to move. And I think there's two parts to that. One is moving in the here and now, like I just talked about, using me in very normal, ordinary ways to breathe life or to encourage or to give a word of knowledge or whatever. There's also the waiting with expectancy for the kingdom to come, for the age to come, knowing that the darkness of night that we're living in will one day come to an end. And so we wait expectantly for the rule and reign of God to come to completion.
Well, Sam.
So that's a few thoughts. That's a bit of a ramble.
That's good. I like it. I think, it's just like really having eyes to see like what God's doing. And sometimes we don't expect to see him in certain ways, right? Like, what is it, that classic joke of the guy on the abandoned island, and he's like asking God to remove him from this island, and there's a boat that comes by, there's a helicopter that comes by, and he doesn't take it, and then he gets to heaven, and God's like, I sent you a boat, I sent you a helicopter. And so it's like, in the same way, like, do we have like specific ideas of how God's gonna work that we're like almost too tunnel visioned into, hey, like, let's watch for him actively with our eyes in what might he be doing in our lives.
And that's a great point, Ryan. Like, I just used the example of kind of a word of knowledge kind of thing. Most of the time for me, and I don't know about for you, but it's in very ordinary stuff.
Totally.
Like God's speaking to me in the changing of Harper's diapers.
Yeah.
As I'm
every moment holy.
exactly, or in all, He's refining me and speaking to me in shaping my character through my family or through what's going on at work or whatever.
Yeah.
And this is where and we've talked about this practice quite a bit over this last year, but practices like the prayer of examine are so helpful in the seeing God at work and the watching and the expectancy of Him as you look back. And so for those who don't know, prayer of examine, maybe we can even link to a little bit of that in the video or in the description. Prayer of examine is really just looking over your previous day and saying, God, where were you at work? Where were you moving? Where were you calling me into deeper intimacy with you? Where were you refining me? And by looking back and seeing Him in the back, it makes it much easier to find Him and see Him in the present.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Well, hey, I feel like that's a good conversation for today. Why don't we cap it there, and we'll allow you guys to discuss and have a great conversation in your community groups. So,
Awesome.
yeah,
God bless you
thanks,
guys. See you soon.
We hope you enjoyed the teaching today. If you're wanting to follow along with our community group's discussion guide with your group, you can head to cachurch.ca/media, where you can find the discussion guide. Not only are there questions there related to the sermon, but there's also prayer prompts that relate to the passage or the topic that we were talking about, and practices that you can, on an individual level or a group level, begin integrating into your life to not only bring this knowledge into your mind, but to begin living it out.